So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here today in Nairobi at the Mo Ibrahim Governance Weekend, but also online as we have some participants joining us on Zoom from all around the world, hopefully. I'm Aurélie Villaespesa, I'm Project Officer at the Paris Peace Forum, and it's a pleasure to have you here to talk a bit more about the 2023 Paris Peace Forum Call for Solutions. So today we'll be discussing the opportunities that the forum can give you as project leaders. So if you have an organization that is implementing solutions on the ground that aims to solving global challenges, you're in the right place. So raise your hand if you have an organization that is solving a problem, a major issue at international level, but also regional level. Is there anyone here solving problems? Okay, thank you for raising your hands. And if you haven't raised your hand, you're maybe in the wrong place. No, just kidding. This was just to wake you up a bit after lunch. I hope you will stay wide awake. So without further ado, let me introduce today's speakers. So we have Rachel Adams, who is Principal Researcher at Research ICT Africa. So Rachel is working on the Global Index on Responsible AI, but also with AI for D, right? Before that, Rachel was a Chief Research Specialist at the Human Sciences Research Council of South Africa, and she has published widely on issues relating to AI and also decolonization, gender, human rights, specifically related to the African region. So welcome, Rachel. Then we have Jack Kimani, who is the founding CEO of Climate Platform Action for Africa, who is an organization that aims to put Africa's potential forward when it comes to fighting climate change. So before that, he was a senior program director with the Clinton Health Access Initiative and the Africa Regional Director with the Clinton Climate Initiative of the Clinton Foundation. So welcome, Jack, as well. And last but not least, Justin Vaïsse, who is the founder and director of the Paris Peace Forum. Prior to that, he was the head of policy planning at the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs and has also served as director of research at the Brookings Institution in Washington. He is a historian specializing in international relations and American foreign policy, between other things. And he also has written some books that you can find online.
And buy. Just fine.
Yeah, that's the most important. Okay, so next slide, please. Now, in terms of agenda, we will be presenting to you in a few minutes the Paris Peace Forum and its Solutions Hub specifically today. Then we will give the floor to Rachel and Jack to speak about their initiatives and so for you to know a bit more what kind of solutions we had at the forum the past years and what kind of solutions we want to showcase again this year. Then just before going to a Q&A session, we will dive into the details of the call for solutions so you can know how to concretely become a 2023 showcase solution. Next slide, please. So now for the audience that is new to the forum, Justin, can you maybe talk a bit more about what was the idea when behind the forum when you founded it? And yeah, next slide, please.
Thank you, Aurélie. So I love not being the moderator and so just being a speaker. So thank you for that and for organizing the session. Thank you, Jack, for welcoming us in Nairobi, which is your own turf. And thank you, Rachel, for participating. I'll say a quick word on the forum in general, and then we'll go to the call for solutions. And so we can actually go to the next slide, as I'm not going to read them, but just let you discover. So when you get bored, you can just read what's online, and so that might be more interesting. More seriously, what we set out to do in 2018 was to try to innovate in terms of solutions for a world where global challenges seemed more and more complex, hard to tackle, and where solutions, that is existing global governance, including the UN, were not always giving the right answers. We believe that the UN should remain at the center of international policy and policies, but sometimes great power politics or populism and other factors make it impossible for the UN to actually play its role. And then national governments are not enough, because we know that many of the problems we have, whether global health or digital or climate, indeed, etc., are don't stop at the border, and so one country by itself cannot act. So the idea was, why don't we have a moment during the year where we convene not just heads of state and government, but also civil society organizations, foundations, NGOs, experts, etc., but also the private sector, to try and see what we can do in terms of finding these solutions. And so the forum really has evolved into three things, really. One is a convening. As you know, November 11 is the reason why we called the Paris Peace Forum. It was 100 years after the anniversary of World War I, and so it was the opportunity to launch the forum, and peace was the overall theme, even though, as you have noticed, we focus more on global governance. But between you and I, Paris Global Governance Forum sounds terrible. Even I think, would not have gone there if it had been called this way. So we decided to call it the Paris Peace Forum, with the idea that better global governance on these things that I mentioned, from migration to vaccination, etc., prepare the world for a more lasting peace. So convening the world is the first pillar, the November event that we've held already 5 times. We'll hold another edition in November in the new place, in the new location that we've picked, which is the Palais Brongniart in Paris, and with which we're very happy, judging on the last edition. And the crowd you have at the forum is very unique. I've done many conferences, and believe me, you don't find the same crowd either in Davos or in Munich or at the Shangri-La Dialogue or the Aspen Festivals. Ideas Festival, and what you find is a great mix of people from north and south. The organization itself, the board of the organization, so my boss in a sense, is made up of organizations from north and south at equal number, and we really insist on having parity pretty much in all the initiatives and things that we are doing. Of course, don't ask me to define South or Global South. I won't. But you see the overall idea. We insist on having Latin American, African, and South Asian participants, presenters, and members at the forum. So that's the power of the event is November 10 and 11 for this year is the meeting. The second thing we do, which is something that came out slowly, was to assemble coalitions where we see a need that is not provided for by the UN or other institutional governance bodies, whether it's on cybersecurity or on critical minerals or on protecting children online, for example, or on ensuring the sustainability of the environment, of the outer space environment, etc. And for many of these issues, the right way to act, barring the existence of a UN process, is by assembling these coalitions, by having governments, private sector, and civil society organization work together. And so we have 5 or 6 of these coalitions. And so we're working year-long on that. So Paris Peace Forum is both an event and a policy organization. And then the third pillar, which you all know because that's what we're going to talk about, which was here from the start, from 2018, is the idea of boosting solutions. And so that happens mostly during the forum itself, the edition of the forum itself, but it also continues throughout the year. And so I'll perhaps do a bit of a dive into that. Zahra, if we could move to the next. So it's what we call the Solutions Hub. And so it really started in 2018. So we sort of invented that because we thought that in order to make sure that we didn't sort of slide towards an elite forum where we would have only officials and heads of Philippines and CEOs, and that was it, that we would have a number of concrete on-the-ground organizations presenting, showcasing the work that they're doing, and that in turn, it could help them get attention, sometimes media attention, connections, political connections, and we've had lots of small stories of good connections that existed. Support during the 2 or 3 days of the forum through the meetings, exposure, etc. And generally, project leaders, as we call them, are very satisfied with what we offer. They come back. We have this call for solutions that we have always done in the spring. So now it's March to May. So the deadline, we'll say it, I think a few more times, but is May 23. So there are more than 3 weeks left to apply. And so what we do, I'm just looking at the slide to see if I'm on message. So we've had 462 projects so far. So it's a fantastic sort of database of, and it's sort of, you know, at a time when the international scene is very depressing, honestly, because it's all about competition and rivalry and the north-south gap and bad news on climate and bad news on pretty much everything. I must say that it's extraordinarily refreshing and engaging to have all the applications and to go through the applications, because then you see the good side of humanity, honestly, and it's very, it's a very encouraging moment. So we've had 462 projects. We showcase them in the Space for Solutions during the forum, and we mobilize the project leaders community. That is, there's a link that is kept. So some projects go their own way, but others really participate in the activities that we offer them throughout the year. And then one extra thing we do is so we, during the process of application, we get hundreds of applications. I think 2020 we got like more than 800 of them. So there was huge work, because of course we do justice to all of the applications, even though only now about 60 are selected. And so it's a lot of work to go through all the applications, and I think that already we have more than 200 in our inbox for this year. And it shows that there's interest and that we are sort of filling a void. So the main service we are giving to the project leaders is during the edition itself, showcasing, having a stand, being able to be exposed to media officials, people from development banks or philanthropic foundations, etc. But then we also pick 10 projects that are supported throughout the year. So like between November 2023 and November 2024 for the next class, 10 projects that we support through a mentorship program. So that's also something we invented in 2018. We are not a philanthropic foundation, so we don't have the resources to give money to the projects. That's not something that we can provide, even though we can facilitate ties with foundations or development agencies or other potential funders, but ourselves, we're not able to provide that. However, what we can provide, and which has proven quite useful, is connections with people through these mentors. So we have 10 projects, we have 20 mentors. They come from the private sector, whether Microsoft or the Brunswick Group. They come from international organizations, from the World Bank, from the EU. For example, they come from NGOs. So they are generally experienced people that have wide networks and that are ready to spend time with a project during the whole year and use their connections through regular calls to support the project. So, and I think we've made a difference for quite a few of them. We select them not just because they are the best project, that doesn't really make sense, but rather whether we can bring them something that they wouldn't get otherwise. That is, if what we can provide through the mentorship program is sort of customized or is adapted for them. And I think I'm done.
Thank you, Justin. So yeah, in a nutshell, if you participate in our call for solution, you can have the chance to be selected and have the chance maybe then to have a booth in the middle of the venue, but also have a speaking slot in the program and get to network with very interesting people, and maybe then get selected to join the SCUP program. So speaking of the SCUP program, we have two actually people here that are participating in this program that agreed to join us today. So I will now turn to you guys and ask you whether you could tell us a bit more about the initiatives that you are leading and the ones that were specifically selected at the forum, so people can have a better idea of what we're looking for. So maybe Rachel, you want to start?
Sure. Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to kind of hear that broader history and objectives and how we fit in. We had actually applied for the Paris Peace Forum a few days before I went on maternity leave, and then I forgot about it, and it came through long after the baby was born, but it was a very special time. So I am leading a project, and I've got two of my colleagues here with me, Diana and Zara, called the Global Index on Responsible Artificial Intelligence. AI has not been spoken a lot about over the last 2 days, which is both enormously refreshing, but is an absent marker. It's absent because it's critically connected to all the issues we've been discussing for the last couple of days. I think artificial intelligence, if not governed well, is going to drive further global inequality, widen the gap between the rich and the poor, bring enormous benefits to rich nations who are able to access predictive, preventative medicine, worsen the burden of disease here. And then the climate change, the climate impacts of AI, the carbon footprint is worse than the whole airline industry. So it is huge and it is important. So our global index seeks to establish a tool for policymakers, for international intergovernmental organizations and other stakeholders to monitor and advance the progress on responsible AI in over 120, 130, hopefully 140 countries around the world. So we have established a global research network. Diana is running it, so that we can collect primary data in all these countries in order to understand where countries are at in terms of progress and commitments and activities in relation to responsible AI. We spent a good long year speaking to different people and groups from around the world to broaden the global concept of what responsible AI is, because what we have found is that the term and the principles that have been decided against that conceptualization of the term have come largely from the global north and do not always reflect the experiences and the expertise of groups in the global south. And so the fact that we were developing a new globally relevant tool from the global south, particularly from the African region, was really important, not just politically, but scientifically too, and also for ensuring that this is a tool that's useful for stakeholders in the global south as well. So we are a project funded by Government Affairs Canada and the International Development Research Centre of Canada. Just last week, USAID committed to also being a co-funder with us, and we also just won a prize, a recognition from the UNESCO's International Research Centre on Artificial Intelligence as one of the few solutions that is going to, AI solutions, I think we're one of the very few policy ones, they're mostly technical ones, that's going to have a significant impact on the realization of the SDGs. We are really hoping that this will be a tool through over the next 4 editions by the time we get to 2030, because it will be every other year. We'll be able to really demonstrate how artificial intelligence has impacted on the realization of the SDGs. I'm going to pause there because you didn't ask about the mental work yet, so I'll speak about that when you come back to me. Thank you, Aurélie.
Thanks a lot, Rachel, and congratulations on your prize. It's a good news.
Yes, thank you.
Amazing. So yeah, we have wonderful people like that you can meet at the forum. So now I will turn to Jack. Same question. What is your initiative about, or can you tell us a bit more about the work you do at CAPE?
Thank you very much, Aurelia, and excuse me. As Justin mentioned, welcome to Kenya, welcome to Nairobi. Everyone that has come in for the last couple of days, at least for the Mo Ibrahim Governance Weekend. And I hope we're putting our best foot forward while you're in town, despite the weather. But the Climate Action Platform for Africa, CAP-A, as Aurelia started out. So it's an organization, a public benefit organization or a nonprofit, if you like, that is working to realize the potential for Africa as a global hub for climate action. And we feel strongly that Africa has a comparative and competitive advantage to be able to play a key role towards providing the solution that the rest of the world is seeking. We do this through a four-step process: identifying, number one, quantifying, prioritizing, and ultimately realizing economic opportunities within the continent anchored on climate action. Now, within CAP-A, we have a big focus on collaboration, partnership, and partly the reason why the Paris Peace Forum was quite attractive to us, because collaboration is really at the center of what the forum does in bringing together various actors, various institutions, and enabling the synergies that do exist, the key questions that we need to be asking, some of the trade-offs we need to be making can be considered even as we take our solutions forward. You know, it's very similar to the work that Jamie, I see Jamie Drummond in the room and sharing strategies are doing. And that is something we feel enables to amplify and advance the solutions that we're all discussing about. So we put collaboration at the core of the work that we are doing. And we emphasize on specific relevant interventions that lead to the system orchestration of these ideas, essentially complementing our partners to drive and scale the solutions that they're driving. So we don't pretend that we can, in and of ourselves, be the only player, be the only actor in enabling the difference and the scale of impact that we're looking to achieve. And so being able to engage through a forum like the Paris Peace Forum for us is critical, it's key in an event like this. And we feel it's a key ingredient of what enables the success of the solutions that we are packaging. In the context of our engagement with the forum, we're focused on a project that is looking to essentially harness the power of smallholder farmers, African smallholder farmers as climate entrepreneurs. We feel, the vast majority of obviously of Africans, in some degree or the other, engage in farming, and vast majority of them at a small scale. So if you can unleash this army of smallholder farmers towards being active and valued contributors towards the climate solution, just ponder, pause to think what that could translate in terms of impact. And that's the work that we're focused on at CAP-A, looking at how we can be able to create business model that can be able to aggregate these climate smart interventions so that we can be able to have new and significant incomes for these smallholder farmers. Now, the way you monetize this is through the carbon markets. And so carbon markets are an integral part of the work that we are engaged in. And I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about carbon markets in the last few days. There's a lot of good things that are coming from the markets. There's a lot of other not so good news coming from the market. And overall, we look at it as a tool, as a platform that leveraged the right way could enable us to realize the solutions that we need to work for the farmers. And we're looking at how then do you make the markets function more optimally? How do you make it that 80% of the revenues are not just being plowed back into the project, and you're just left with about 20% that can be then shared across the project developers, the farmers, and not really incentivize the kind of behaviors that we need? How do you look at instruments like forward financing that enable that you don't need to be waiting on a project developer who has locked in an off-taker at a certain price point that is quite favorable to them, and what they're extending to you as a developer within the continent is just a small proportion of that, but you have no really other recourse because financial institutions do not consider this to be bankable projects to engage in. So it's unlocking that opportunity for smallholder farmers in a way that first we can be able to scale these already proven interventions, climate smart interventions, without necessarily having to depend or rely on development finance, which we know it's limited, which we know doesn't have the same kind of scale and scope of private sector financing, and make these farmers not just be bystanders anymore towards providing the solutions that we're all seeking towards this crisis. But most importantly, the impact you'll have on their livelihoods. We anticipate that if you enable farmers to see a direct line between how this benefits them and their efforts being rewarded in a way that is commensurate to the input that they're putting in, then we can enable that we scale a lot of these interventions that have otherwise not been able to get to the impact that they need to generate. So it's primarily the engagement with the forum, looking at how we create a bespoke new asset class specific to smallholder farmers, a smallholder farmer type of credit, a credit that recognizes the benefits that a smallholder farmer, when they generate a credit, that credit is comes in, baked in it, all these other ecosystem services, biodiversity benefits are baked into it, and how then that can translate into premium payments for the farmers, and then provide an avenue for farmers to monetize their efforts and to address the climate crisis in the process. Very happy to obviously provide additional details around it. My colleague Keshini Shah is with me, who leads this stream of work for us, and it's work that we feel is very critical, and part of the reason we were very happy to partner with the Paris Peace Forum on it.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you for presenting this very ambitious project indeed. And yeah, of course, if you want to speak a bit more with Jack and Rachel on their initiatives, you can talk to them when they go out, but also you can follow them on their website or social medias. I have another question for you. So coming back a bit on the call for solutions, can you tell us what you hope to get out of the Paris Peace Forum when you heard of it, and what in the end came out, specifically in the event? And maybe now that you are part of the Scaler program, it's been almost 5 months now. So what are, for now, the outcomes? What can you tell us about this process that you've been following? Rachel? Yeah, thank you, Aurélie. So we've been really kind of floored by the commitment our mentors have given us. We weren't able to make our April session, partly because we have a colleague in Sudan and we were really preoccupied with how we can help her. So now the May session is 2 hours, which we didn't expect. They've doubled it. But we came to our mentors with a couple of questions. The first was, how do we claim legitimacy and credibility for a project that is not coming out of Stanford or coming out of a university or a global North research institution that has its own and carries its own name and brand? We are a think tank called Research ICT Africa that's been on the African continent for 15 years and has a very solid reputation, but it can't compare to Stanford. How do we ensure that we present ourselves as a credible tool that will be used by policy mature environments as well as emerging policy environments? One of the kind of key things that our mentors did was help us to think through how to use our pilot process. So we are about to go and pilot the methodology and conceptual framework that we have spent over a year designing. That will start next month. We're piloting in Jamaica, Uruguay, Canada, Burkina Faso, Kenya, Palestine, Sri Lanka, and India. So a really fantastic selection of countries, which is where our country partners, our regional partners are, and that's why we're piloting in those countries. But they helped us to think through how this wasn't just a pilot, it was a proof of concept. And so once we were able to demonstrate the kind of credibility and efficiency of the efficacy of this methodology that we had designed, the indicators that we developed for what responsible AI in
measurable form looks like and requires, it will enable us to bring on board more partners to extend our kind of partnership and credibility basis. They've also helped us think through some of the really tricky political issues that I think we weren't adequately prepared for. So how will certain countries respond to where they are ranked, and how will we respond to that? How will we deal with Russia? How will we incorporate good practices that might be coming out in Russia for responsible AI and in the context of the war in Ukraine, and similarly with Palestine and Israel. So that was just vital kind of advice and guidance. But otherwise, their kind of commitment to us and being able to have these incredible experts that come with years and years of experience that we of course do not have, and the minds that they bring to expand what our project can be and is just invaluable.
Thank you. Can you maybe just remind your mentor's name to everyone? So,
oh my goodness, I actually don't know their surnames because we're on such good terms. Mark is, I think he's director of publications at the EU, and Jean-Marie is the previous undersecretary for peacekeeping for the United Nations. Yeah,
exactly.
so wonderful people.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot.
First name basis now.
Jean-Marie Guéhenno, and Mark is?
Mark Gray.
Mark Gray, right.
So Jack, now same question to you. So what have you been able to take out from the forum? What are your lessons from this process until now?
Yeah, no, thank you. So when we applied to the program, we had a key aim of broadening the network of the partners, the actors that we were engaging. So like I highlighted earlier on, to be able to develop a new asset class that serves smallholder farmers in terms of a type of credit that attracts the kind of returns, the kind of premium pricing that will be most relevant to incentivize the kind of behaviors we need in smallholder farmers, we needed to engage with the entire ecosystem, the entire value chain, carbon trading value chain, from the buyers to the intermediaries to the financiers. Everybody needed to be part of this conversation. And we anticipated, obviously being a participant in the forum would have allowed us access to this kind of actors that we could engage with, get their input, because the work we're doing is not a research-oriented exercise. We do intend to have this translate into tangible impact, into tangible, realizable projects that farmers can be able to derive benefits from. So we needed this to be anchored on reality. We needed this to be anchored on actual real lived experiences. And we needed to hear what buyers' perspectives in terms of what is that you need to see in an African smallholder farmer carbon credit that will enable you then to pay, say, instead of the $15, $20, you can pay perhaps $35, $50. What is that will enable you to move to that level of appreciating and valuing an African smallholder farmer credit at that scale? And then beyond that is understanding what would it take to structure some of these financial instruments. And I think we needed to engage across that ecosystem. And what the forum has done for us is provide an avenue to that, provide an access to that, just from the event itself last year in November, the interactions that we had, the conversations, the various stakeholders that were in attendance that we had conversations with, the questions they were asking. And then moving into being selected for the Scale-Up program. And we took some time actually to nail the mentors. Aurélie is nodding, I can see from the corner of my eye, because we were quite particular in the kind of input that we needed. And thankfully, we have gotten mentors that we feel have added critical value to our thinking. Stefano, who I think has been with the Commission, the EU Commission, almost 4 decades now, and he brings in And these are good examples. Stefano doesn't have, he's a lawyer by background, doesn't bring any direct sort of knowledge or experience into the carbon markets, but he has obviously a policy framing, a regulatory framing, a network that is unrivaled, to know who perhaps to connect you to know, the things that, in the real world will need to be factored into this kind of an endeavor. So he'll put us on the spot in, have you thought about this and that? And then of course, Katie from Microsoft, I forget her last name, Sachs, who I believe leads their carbon removals work. And so this again is where, how representing Microsoft, what is that you're looking for when you're committing to, offtake arrangement for certain kind of carbon, carbon credits? How do you assess who to buy from and where to buy from? And how do you engage even with the market actors to get to, your own decarbonization, your own ambition within your corporate environment to achieve that objective? So we're trying to make this relatable to the players in the market right now. We don't want this to be a paper that we can present with great ideas sounding absolutely amazing, but with no really tangible impact on the smallholder farmers that we are aiming to benefit. And the forum has been great in that regard. I mean, I think we continue to find multiple avenues or connections, through the forum. And one additional thing I'll say, the forum does have tentacles in so many different things. We are involved in supporting the government of Kenya here with the Africa Climate Action Summit. And we got to find out, I think the Paris Peace Forum is playing shepherd on another forum, another summit that is coming up in Paris. Looking at how we start, the Bridgetown agenda and how we start structuring a new financial pact that is most relevant for what is happening. That creates an additional platform for engagement, and we've reached out to see how then we plug in to an arrangement of that nature. There is such a big network within the forum itself. And as you start to engage, you start finding avenues for different personalities. We're talking of senior personalities. I'm meeting with one of those senior personalities tomorrow who will go unnamed right now. But the reason why I'm able to access them is because of the relationship through the forum. And the forum allowing that you're no longer a stranger as you make the introduction. There is familiarity, and you're within a family, so to speak. That makes it that, at least having that conversation and a foot in the door, you can start engaging. So I could keep talking, but let me pause there.
Thank you. And I just want to say that we didn't pay them to say those nice things. So full disclosure. But yeah, so now maybe let's move a bit forward. But thank you to both of you for your interventions. Next slide, please. So now we will be going into the details of how to become a 2023 Showcase Solutions. But just before that, I will ask Justin, can you give us a sneak preview of the coming editions? Maybe some details that no one heard of.
Yeah. So as you've understood, so we focus on global governance in general. So whether it's climate or AI and digital in general, whether it's global health, on which we have very, very strong activities, etc. So the great things is that there are no silos in the at the forum, and so you can meet someone talking about AI, someone talking about refugees, someone talking about security, etc. And so it's what's the jargon, cross-pollination or whatever. Anyway, I hate this jargon, but I use it anyway. But more importantly, what we try to do at every edition is to have a sort of unifying theme that allow people to sort of work in the same direction. And so we focused obviously on COVID in 2020. In 2021, we focused on the North-South gap, which had been widening a lot because of COVID. Last year, the edition was about the multi-crisis. something that Davos copied afterwards. With the polycrisis, they're very pretentious. They chose the Greek expression. Anyway, but the multi-crisis was the idea of reinforcing sets of problems that we needed to solve at the same time if we wanted to have a good impact. So this year, we're sort of taking stock of a unwelcome reality, which is the intensification of the rivalry among great powers, especially US, China, which is basically contaminating all fields of cooperation. And so the question is, how do we preserve cooperation in a world of competition? That's the overall theme. So it's not just US, China, it's also other aspects, Russia, obviously, it's also the North-South gap. And so how do we preserve, how do we compartmentalize, if you'd like, so that we are able to actually work on climate, on critical minerals, on global health, etc., without on debt. And you mentioned the June summit, for which we are giving a hand, so to speak. And that's really important because all of these fields are being sort of tainted and damaged by the by competition. And so that's the overall theme for this year. But we'll have many different aspects. We'll probably have something I just discussed with Yusundur on a virtual meeting during the forum on the digital let's say the digital identity of Africa. We'll have other special features, but the overall theme will be cooperation beyond competition.
Okay, thank you. And maybe we can also say that the event will take place at Palais Brongniart again this year, and it will happen from 10 to 11 of November. So now I will, next slide, please. I will talk a bit more about the details on how to apply. So you must be wondering, who can apply? Can I apply? We accept every type of organizations. So it can be a project that is led by an NGO, an international organization, but also a state. We have also projects from ministries. So it's very open on that aspect. And then we have specific eligibility criteria. So I won't go through all of them. You can find all of this information on our website, on our rules and regulations of the COFA solutions. But the most important ones that I wanted to highlight here today are that solutions must be at some kind of an advanced phase of implementation. We don't really accept solutions that are only at the idea stage or design phase. Then we also focus on solutions that have regional impacts or global impacts, although we can still discuss some local, national issues that are very relevant, for example, when we speak about indigenous communities. Another criteria that is very important is the themes. So every solution has to be able to fit in one of the 2023 themes. So next slide, please. So this year we will have 10 themes, and they all fit in the 4 priorities of the forum. So again, you can find all of that information on our website. I won't go through all of them, but we have AI, we have climate, but specifically on carbon markets and how to make them trustfully. Then we also have a theme on women and agriculture, a theme on outer space debris, and let's take another one. Yeah, protecting forests, for example. Next slide, please. Okay, so to apply, you just have to go on our website and fill the form, the online form, which is in French or English, and it's completely free. You don't need to pay to apply. However, once you're selected, we ask you to pay a participation fee for the booth that amounts to 1,200 euros pre-tax, and also to cover for your participation costs, so your trip to Paris. But we are very aware that lots of organizations don't have the financial means to pay for that amount. So we offer the possibility to apply for financial funding, of course, financial help to go to Paris, but also on the participation costs. And that is all on the online form. And then one thing we can also help you with is with visa processes. So we can of course, give you letters of invitation so everyone can come in Paris. Next slide, please. So that's almost it. So if you're interested in our call for solutions or might be knowing someone who is, feel free to share it. Feel free to apply. We will send the link in the chat for those of you that are online. And you can, for those of you who are here, check our website. It's all there. And yeah, we will be selecting up to 60 solutions this year, and you will have the chance to be next to Rachel and Jack because they will be there again this year. And as per the timeline, so as Justin mentioned, you have to apply until May 23, then it's over. And the selection committee is composed of 6 high-level personalities. It's an independent jury. It's not really us at the forum that make the decision, so don't harass us. And yeah, so the solutions will be selected in July, but official announcement will only be showcased in September. Next slide, please. So that's it. Now we will have a Q&A session. So for those of you that are here in Nairobi, just raise your hands and we'll make sure to pass a microphone to you. If you have any questions on the Paris Peace Forum, the projects that you heard of, but also the call for solutions, feel free to raise your hand. And I can also check, for those of you that are participating online, I will check the Q&A section. So don't hesitate to put your questions on that tool as well. Everyone's shy today. One question. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Hafu Toure. Sorry, I joined a bit late. I had a question because I'm a fellow of the French African Foundation, and we spent some time in Paris last October. And one of the big topics that we discussed with, obviously, the cabinet of President Macron was peace and some of the aspect between how peacekeeping between West Africa, especially Francophone countries, and France has kind of murked some of the relationship there. So I wanted to know, do you guys do any work with the French African Foundation and how some of these discussions could be brought to the Paris Peace Fund?
Perhaps I can take this one. So, no, we don't happen to actually do work with the French African Foundation, and we don't do much by way of working on peacekeeping issues. Well, one thing to keep in mind is that the forum is not a geopolitical forum, so you don't actually discuss. So you don't have sessions, for example, on Sudan or Yemen or Ukraine or the South China Sea, etc. We don't do this for a simple reason, which is that we precisely, to take the 2 keywords I was using earlier, we focus on cooperation, and so we put a premium on having all countries there, or almost all countries, and we try to sort of minimize the issues that could be contentious and that could get in the way of cooperating. Of course, there are limits to that. So one example is Russia. We think that Russia has put itself outside of the boundaries of admissible conduct, especially for a P5 member. So we didn't have any Russian representative in last November, but we are not a Western club and we are not a summit of democracies. And so we welcome countries from all continents, and we have an open door policy. We have a strong Chinese presence, for example. I was in China just 3 weeks ago, and obviously we don't deal with all issues with all people when it comes to freedom of the press or other issues, but we insist on having as large. We had if I remember well, in 2021 we had about 100 and almost 70 countries represented, either by officials or by nationals from these countries, and so we want to make it as universal as possible, and we want to tackle some of these problems without sort of redoing the battles either on the various continents or the ones in New York at the UN. and try to focus on solutions.
Is there any other question? Yes, please.
What sort of senior political attendance do you expect this year?
We don't know yet. We have launched a few invitations, and every year we try to have a focus. So we had Vice President Kamala Harris in 2021. We had a focus on Latin America last year with President Fernandez and President Petro, and also a strong emphasis on Venezuela and the negotiations. The two teams of negotiators were there and did a session at the forum. So we had this Latin American focus. We might have a Southeast Asian focus next year in terms of invitation of heads of state, but we don't. Yeah, next edition. I mean, this year, 2023. Thank you. For me, the year ends on November 13 when I go on holiday, when I go on vacation, and it's over, and then it's next year. Anyway, and so for this reason, we don't know yet, but we always have anywhere between 20 and 40 heads of state and government, and so it depends a bit on the issues. Also, we try to, of course. Mobilize them around things that are useful and have them for specific things, whether it's digital or climate or otherwise.
Thank you. So yes, please.
Hi, my name is Mildred from the AU-EU Youth Cooperation Hub. Just to mention that we were actually one of the inaugural solutions selected in the 2018 edition. And I think maybe something to add, of course, you have a very able panel with you, but maybe just to add in terms of scale and impact of the support that you get from the Paris Peace Forum and even just the collaboration. When we were selected as one of the inaugural solutions, the hub was still very much in pilot phase. And I know you mentioned that you're not doing any ideation. Of course, we had already established the hub, but piloting in terms of how do young people across Africa and Europe collaborate together substantively on issues, not just checking a box that we have involved youth at a very high policy level, but really on the technical frontier. And I think the support that we received from the forum, even in the year of mentorship, has really enabled the hub to evolve from beyond just the expertise being provided on around 7 topics: that's environment, governance, business, culture, arts and sports, peace and security, you name it. We have expertise on that, but just evolving now to a different phase where we can actually have broader impact. So far, we've been able to reach 150,000 young people around all of these topics. From that initial seed of support, collaboration, and convening power that the forum has, and even just moving into a new phase that we're now calling the lab, where we're actually able to bring more stakeholders on board. And I think it's very useful, and I thought it was important to mention it here, just in case there are people who are thinking about, should I put that call for solutions? Should I respond to it? How does this actually work? I think all of us are available just to talk a little bit more about it even after the session.
Thank you. Can I say a word? The AU-EU Youth Hub is close to my heart because it was, as you said, an inaugural project, and because it brought a true blow of fresh air, both in 2018 and 2019. And I remember Mo was quite involved in it as well. And we ended up with a concert of Kora and guitar and the Youth Hub around that. And so I'm really glad that it flourished, and I hope you'll come back with many of your fellows.
Thank you for your witnessing. So I think we're running out of time. So if you have more questions, we're happy to take them after the session. Now I will just ask our speakers if they have one last tip or thoughts for our audience that is online and also here. One last thing to say.
Well, I think, Mildred, your kind of testament is amazing to hear. the information sharing, the networking, the kind of advice and guidance, it's all world class. So if you want to create a project that transcends the boundaries and becomes world class in its reach and impact and visibility, I think this is an excellent forum for doing that.
Yeah, maybe just a last comment, which came from a comment that Justin made. What you find is the number of topics the forum covers, or the various aspects of ongoing initiatives, could open your eyes to perhaps, AI could factor in to the solution that you're working on that you had not thought about, because you'll have the chance to have a conversation with Rachel, you have a chance to have a conversation with somebody else in the room, and create an opportunity to consider inputs or ways to build and amplify the work that you're doing, that you may not have thought of, or at least had the opportunity to explore in the absence of all being under the same roof.
Thank you. And Justin, one last word.
Que le meilleur gagne, which means whomever is best project may he or she win.
Thank you. So I can say, et voilà. So the session is over, and thank you all for joining. Thank you for your time as well to our speakers, and see you maybe in November then. Thank you.